Can you hear me? Good morning to all the delegates here at the conference. It is my pleasure to be part of this panel today, and I will be very interested to hear what my fellow panelists have to say and how they have interpreted the topic. When I first saw the topic of should ELT acquire the status of an industry in India, I was quite perplexed, and I got to thinking about the words of ELT industry. And when I hear the expression ELT industry, I often think of Robert Phillipson's work in linguistic imperialism and his arguments about the ELT industry being either an overt or covert neo-imperialistic mission or something, of spreading English throughout the world and making money, usually with the argument framed that the power base for the ELT industry is either the UK or the USA. And usually the interpretation and other language, English, coming into a country and overpowering or destroying local languages. And in my interpretation of Phillipson's work, it poses sort of an aggressor or a dominant force, for example, the US or the UK, and a more passive India. Now, I've only been in India for 9 months, but I can tell you one thing: Indians are not passive. Quite very good. And how do we refer to somebody who speaks only one language? American. So, I mean, I think it's a dated joke because America is actually changing. When I was growing up, it was true. Americans predominantly only spoke one language. We predominantly spoke English. We would learn a second language in school. I studied German for 6 years, and I can now say one sentence of German, and that's all, after 6 years of study. Now, this is actually changing in America, which I find fascinating, because with the number of immigrants, especially from Hispanic countries, many more Americans are actually bilingual, and bilingual Spanish-English. And there's much more pressure on people who only speak one language, English, to learn Spanish, to access the different domains within America. So I think that's the case of English in India. I don't see it as an imperialistic thing. But going back to the idea of industry, so is teaching an industry? I would argue that there is no way teaching will ever be an industry, in my opinion. In my opinion, teaching is an art, not a science. It's an art form that you need to practice for years and years, and you're never perfect and always growing. I think of industry maybe as associated with making money. And for all of you who are teachers here today, you know that teaching is not about making money in any sense. Most teachers I know take the money that they have earned to go and buy additional materials for their classes. They take the money that they have earned to make extra photocopies. And I don't know any teacher in the world who went into the art of teaching in order to make money. So I'm not sure it's an industry in that sense. But I think ELT, the status of ELT in India today, I do think we're at an interesting juncture. There seems to be, in my opinion, a chasm or a gap between teaching English as literature, teaching English as a subject, versus teaching English as a language, ELT. And it seems to me that there's a divide between literature teachers and English language teachers within India. In my experience, which is not substantial in India, I see literature teachers see themselves as teachers who teach poetry and novels. They teach about character development, they teach about plots that stir our emotions, that stir our souls. They teach about characters. Now, when the literature teacher looks across the chasm at the English language teacher, I fear that they don't see a fellow teacher. I fear they see somebody who is imparting skills, and they don't value that maybe as much as literature, as teaching literature. So they see the English language teacher and they think, oh, skills, they're teaching job skills, they're teaching soft skills, they're teaching for employers, they're teaching children so that they have jobs. They're trainers, not teachers. I would argue that the divide between training and teaching is a false divide. And I don't actually believe there's a difference necessarily in the acquisition of skills and the acquisition of knowledge. And that we're both engaged in education and educating our students. And I think the challenge now is to narrow that chasm, lessen that gap between literature and language teachers, and realize that we can do both, okay? But realize that students need language to access literature. And without the language skills, they will not understand those poems that stir our emotions. They need the language to access the literature. But we can teach skills and literature at the same time. We can teach the skills of language so that students can communicate. We can teach the skills of language so that they can express their dreams more clearly. So in conclusion, I would just say that if we are smart teachers, and no, English language teaching was not and never will be an industry, but I do think that we need to be industrious, embrace change, and narrow the gap between literature teachers and language teachers. Thank you very much.